Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Strategies to Empower Multilingual Learners webinar. It's fantastic to see such a diverse group of folks joining us today. I know that your participation truly does enrich our conversations. So a warm welcome to each of you. Thank you for being part of this installment of our 2024 Partnering for Success webinar series. My name is Jennifer Thompson. I'm a principal on the policy team here at Education Commission of the States, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you. We're going to go ahead and dive into what promises to be a really insightful and valuable session. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Partnering for Success is crafted to offer you, our commissioners, valuable opportunities to connect with peers, with researchers and innovators who are tackling some of the most pressing issues in education policy today. Our goal is for you to leave these webinars not only with fresh insights and inspiration, but also with practical resources that can aid you in addressing similar challenges in your own states. So before we meet today's presenters, I'm excited to hand this off to the President of Education Commission of the States, Jose Munoz. Jose?
Thank you, Jennifer, and hi, everyone. I'm excited to be a part of today's conversation led by our partner, Renaissance. So as you know, at ECS, we're committed and grateful to work with the many esteemed partners such as Renaissance, just to ensure an excellent education for everyone. Our work with elected and appointed state education leaders is focused on making better informed policies. Today's conversation is an exciting opportunity to feature how each of us and experts meet that goal. So thank you, Renaissance, for collaborating with us just to create strategies that support multilingual learners. So multilingual learners, they come from diverse linguistic backgrounds. Many face challenges in accessing the curriculum in a new language. It come to no surprise to us that tailored strategies support better comprehension and retention of academic content. By addressing specific language needs, these strategies can help multilingual students achieve their full academic potential. We all know that strong language skills are foundational for academic and professional success. Better strategies will help them build skills that are crucial for their future. Many education systems have policies and regulations that require support for multilingual learners. By developing effective strategies that ensures these standards are done right and promote best practices in education. So overall, just creating and implementing strategies to support multilingual learners is essential for fostering an inclusive, effective, and equitable education environment. It ensures that all students have the opportunity to succeed regardless of their linguistic background. I'm so pleased to bring us all together on this topic. And with that, I'd like to welcome Doris Keating, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs at Renaissance. Doris is at her best when collaborating and linking ideas with partners to develop new services and products, and work with partners to achieve goals, which includes effective policies that focus on what is best for students. Doris, thank you for partnering with us, and you ready to get us started?
I'm ready, Jose. Thank you very much for that introduction. And hello to everyone. It's good to be a part today of what we are doing to empower multilingual learners. And you are in for a treat to hear from wonderful speakers today around this topic. I want to first share with you our Renaissance mission, which is to accelerate learning for all children and adults of all ability levels and ethnic and social backgrounds worldwide. This is something that we lean into heavily, and of course is a big part of why we're meeting with you today to share with you empowering strategies for multilingual learners. And to continue in that conversation and to set the stage for our guest speakers, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Doris Chavez-Linville, the Senior Director of Linguistic and Culturally Diverse Innovation here at Renaissance. Doris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Doris, to a name. And I am going to kick off actually by reading the mission in Espanol, because we believe that that's an important to really raise the status of all languages. So I'm going to start since Spanish is my native language, acelerar el aprendizaje de todos los niños y adultos, de todos los niveles de habilidad y antecedentes étnicos y sociales en todo el mundo. And again, I am Doris Chavez Linville, and I am very excited here today to introduce you a group of wonderful, wonderful educators that have really worked very hard to make things possible for our students. So I am actually going to go ahead and talk to you a little bit of the of our presenters today. So we have Ryan Sack, the Director for Linguistic Programs at Multilingual District in Illinois. We have Robin Farouk Romero, she's the Department of K-12 Multilingual Programs at Salem Kaiser Public Schools in Oregon. And we also have the Deputy Superintendent, Olga Cobb of Salem Kaiser Public Schools in Oregon. We're so proud and excited to be working with our partners to share today our topic. And next slide, please. Thank you. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about why are we covering this topic. So we're talking about emerging bilingual students, and that there's English language learners, multilingual learners. And there's a lot of reasons why we could be talking about it, that they're large growing student population, that they're facing a lot of achievement gaps compared to the English speaking peers, that there's a very large diverse backgrounds that compound that group of students. But the reality is that we want to look at the data, and we want to look at the research that shows what are the most effective programs that really can support emerging bilingual, multilingual learners, English language learners. If we look at this chart right here, I'd like you to pay attention. This is actually an adapted form of this research that has been done for years and years and years. And we have 3 specific type of programs of services that multilingual learners might receive at a school district. We have in the bottom English only, we have bilingual transitional, and we have dual immersion from bottom to top. So as we look in here, we can see that the one program that has tell us historically research after research after research study is that the one that will not only help multilingual learners meet expectations, but also surpass expectations, and it's the dual lingual immersion programs. So today, it might be a little bit of a different webinar that you might be used to, because we want to highlight what we know is very effective for multilingual learners. So let me tell you a little bit more again about exactly who we're talking about. So we're talking about English language learners, those that bring a language background, or maybe even growing up bilingual, by the way, but they're adding English also to their linguistic repertoire. So as I keep mentioning, there's different terminologies that are used in different places: English language learners, emerging bilinguals, multilingual learners. For this particular webinar, we are going to be talking about those students that are receiving instruction in 2 languages. So that will be the students that are in bilingual programs. Again, they're receiving instruction. In this case, the examples and case studies that will be presented in English and Spanish. But as I mentioned earlier, connected to that research, there's different types of programs, and every program have a specific types of goals based on the instruction that students are receiving. So I'm going to talk a little bit about programs, and they're probably very familiar to programs that you're knowledgeable in your states and your districts. Let's go ahead to the next slide and kind of talk a little bit about what type of instruction emerging bilingual, multilingual learners might be receiving. Again, I could probably spend 3 hours just talking about this, but I only have a minute. So I do have a QR code that will take you to a site that will give you a lot more information of what I'm about to share with you. If you look at this chart from the bottom up, you're going to see when you have English as a mode of instruction all the way to the bilingual education continua. And then if you look from left to right, you're going to have when we have students, English language learners, more segregated to a more integrated approach. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking specifically to the top right quadrant, which is dual language immersion program with the goal of biliteracy. And we can see here that they are actually depicting here a two-way, meaning you have English speakers adding Spanish to their linguistic repertoire, Spanish-speaking speakers adding English to their linguistic repertoire, and students that are growing up bilingual. So having said that, I'm actually want to key up our presenters to think about all the great things that happen in the district, the success, the processes that they have done, but the policies that really affect the way that they plan their programming. So they're going to be really talking about human capital challenges, meaning, as we know, we right now in a crisis when it comes to teachers. Imagine when it comes to a crisis of teachers that are bilingual, that can support bilingual programming. And the second piece that we're going to be highlighting is about the policies around accountability for students that are growing up bilingual. So having said that, I am going to leave you with our first case study. The first one comes from our partners at Salem Kaiser Public Schools. And then from there, we'll go to the second case study, which is from Maldini School District 75 in Illinois. Without further ado, thank you so much. And please, Olga and Robin, take it away.
Thank you so much, Doris. Hi, everyone. My name is Olga Cobb, and in our presentation, we will share some structures and supports for expansion and professional development for a pre-K-12 dual language program that allowed us to expand from 7 to 31 schools in the past 3 years. We are sharing a lot of information today in a short amount of time, so I'll add links to our website and to contact information in the chat in case you want more details of what we share. In the next slide, I want to tell you a little bit about our district. As you see here, we are the second largest district in Oregon, but the most diverse in the state, serving about 39,000 students. Our students' demographics are incredibly diverse, which makes our classrooms very rich environments for culture, language, and learning. We are also the second largest employer in our city, with about 112 languages spoken in Salem Kaiser. Our staff demographics are not quite matching the demographics of our student population, but we have made great progress in this area and continue to recruit and focus on some key strategies that we have used is what we will share with you today. In this next slide, I want to show you our key performance indicators. As you can see there, our priorities are to make sure that our students are proficient readers by 3rd grade, that students feel loved, cared for, valued, and seen in all of our spaces, and that we have different checkpoints throughout their school experience to make sure that they graduate in 4 years and are prepared for a successful next step. These are the indicators that we closely monitor and that we report on to our community and to the state. It's important also that we share briefly our story of dual language in Salem Kaiser. The program started about 24 years ago when an innovative leader wanted language access for all students in one of our community schools. Little by little, it grew to 7 schools, but we converted it into an enrichment program where few had access, and there were some obstacles like enrollment through a very complex lottery system and transportation. I know this story is the story that we have in other schools in the nation. But as a community, our parents started asking about expansion of these programs, and that caused us to make changes to policy, rethink about where programs are located, and use of funding like state student investment accounts or Title IIA for professional development. Our expansion to dual language programs then focused on our neighborhood schools that have high concentration of multilingual learners to make sure that students can walk to their neighborhood school and access this incredible language and cultural gift if that is what they want. As you saw in the beginning, in this next slide, I'm going to show you how we're broken down for our schools. First, we have 65 schools in the system. As of this year, 31 of our schools have dual language programs. Here's our breakdown of those programs. We have 3 pre-K classrooms. This is a small expansion, but incredibly important to our pre-K-12 alignment goals. We have 22 elementary schools, 5 middle schools, with 1 coming on board next year, and 4 of our 6 comprehensive high schools have the program. Now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Robin Farro-Romero, who will share more details about our implementation.
Thank you, Olga. So for the Salem-Keizer School District, and like many other districts in the country, we base our program goals on the 3 pillars of dual language. Those pillars are biliteracy and bilingualism, high academic achievement, and the sociocultural pillar. These pillars are important and they ensure a strong focus on biliteracy in 2 or more languages. That's to ensure that students not only speak and understand the other language they're using, but they can also read and write at grade level in both languages. We believe this focus on the 3 pillars is helping to achieve our state goal to close the opportunity gap. It increases the capacity of our students to be college and career ready in 2 languages. In our next slide, what I want to share with you, you already heard about the effectiveness and research around dual language programs. Another indicator from that same research is to ensure that students have access to instruction in both languages each day. Therefore, we base our program model on an 80-20 model, where starting in kinder and 1st grade, we ensure that they have a strong foundation in Spanish. That part of that is because often in the classroom is where we're able to ensure that students get to hear, speak, read, and write in that target language. As we know, much of the influence in our communities and homes is English. Then starting in 2nd grade, we begin to add 10%, and each subsequent grade 10% until we arrive at 4th through 12th grade with 50% of Spanish and English each day. At that point, our students have literacy skills in both languages and are able to engage in content in both languages. As we go on to the next slide, an important part of our dual language program is partnering with our local universities and practitioners who understand and are embedded in the research of effective programs. We've worked with Dual Language Education of New Mexico, a leading agency in the US around dual language, the Bueno Center of the University of Colorado, and with Dr. Susana Ibarra-Johnson and Dr. Jackie Carries-Hurley, who are helping us to do research. These partnerships really help to ensure we have effective dual language models that are based in research, and they provide high quality professional development for teachers. This is where state and federal funding are crucial to ensure districts have effective funding for these partnerships. As we've worked with these researchers, we've really focused on our systems to support the implementation. We provide ongoing professional development and really focus on developing capacity in our district leaders, as well as our site principals to lead the implementation at their sites. We use the guiding principles of dual language to help them with checklists. We meet with them monthly and really help them to look at ways to monitor their progress through looking at data and doing classroom visits. Another highlight from our state, in the next slide you'll see, is our, it's called HB 2056. It's an initiative called Access to Linguistic Inclusion. And this legislation in the state of Oregon is designed for high school students to obtain language arts and other content credits by taking classes in languages other than English. This benefits particularly students who have been identified as English language learners because it removes barriers and allows them access to core classes, and they get to use their asset in their language, as well as it gives high quality instruction for all our dual language programs. State and federal policies like this and funding supports for dual language help us share all students access and help them to graduate and be prepared for a successful life. Currently, as we look at the other slide, one of the initiatives that is actually in 50 states in the United States is called the Seal of Biliteracy. The seal is added to a graduation diploma of a high school student when they've demonstrated their literacy skills in one or more language, both English and another language. They demonstrate this by participating in effective dual language programs, and some also obtain parts of it through standardized language exams. Another benefit that we're seeing from our dual language programs that go through the secondary up through high school is students are accessing more rigorous courses, which we know will contribute to their university applications and career pathways. And so we're going to have Olga talk a little bit more about the staffing supports and highlight one of our particular high schools.
Thank you. So how have we been able to grow a program in 3 years? One of our biggest and most interesting challenges for an expansion like this was staffing. We have developed a close partnership with our local universities to create a bilingual pathways program for licensure. We have a cadet program at the high school level to capture and encourage any student at this level who wants to be an educator. The 5 educators, for example, in the screen right now are all dual language teachers in one of our comprehensive high schools, and they are all graduates from Salem Kaiser. On this next slide, while we continue strengthening our Grow Your Own program, we also work closely with Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Spain to bring teachers for an exchange experience. This is a beneficial program for both the educator and for us, as we see these incredible professionals bringing high levels of content knowledge and strategies for Spanish, our partner language, and also important contributions and social for the social and cultural pillar of dual language. Next slide.
So of course, all school districts implementing dual language programs have strengths and we have challenges. For us, as you've heard, our strengths include the expansion of dual language programs in 31 of our 65 schools. And we've really developed the capacity in our leaders to continue to provide effective professional development for our teachers. Some of the challenges that we encounter is in state assessment systems. Currently, most states assess only in one language. Having policies that are more inclusive of assessments in one or more language really allows students to demonstrate their actual abilities, particularly in reading and in math. Another challenge can be instructional resources, particularly at the secondary level. So it's really imperative that we have funding that is approved at state and federal levels to support all of these aspects that you've heard today to continue effective dual language programs. We're now going to hear from Ryan Zach on another wonderful case study to highlight effective practices.
Thank you so much, Robin and Doris, or Olga. So I am Ryan Zach, the Director of Linguistic Programs in District 75 Mundelein. We're about 35 miles outside of Chicago, and we are a suburban district. And I want to emphasize the importance of developing strong dual language, bilingual, and English learner programs in suburban and rural districts, in addition to urban districts, where these demographics are growing substantially every year. We are about 1,600 students in our district, about 40% low income. We are approximately 55% Latino Hispanic, 30% white, 15% is spread across Black, Pacific Asian, Pacific Islander, Asian, as well as mixed race. And about 30% of our students are identified as English learners. However, a huge percentage of our students, home language English, home language Spanish, and home language other, participate in our dual immersion, our dual language program, but with the goal of bilingualism, biliteracy, and multiculturalism. On the next slide, you can see the pathway. I'm actually a product of Mundelein. I grew up here, and I did see the demographic and sociolinguistic transition over the years. In the 90s, we had a large influx of Latinos, particularly from Mexico. And then they developed a transitional bilingual education program to support and comply with state laws to provide bilingual education. About 10 years ago, we developed a two-teacher, two-way immersion program because all of the families, home language English and home language Spanish, wanted their children to become bilingual, multicultural, and biliterate. In 2020, we changed our name to a two-way dual language program, and our superintendent hired an auditor in order to review our program to provide best practice program recommendations. On the next slide, you can see that we hired a bilingual professor, Dr. David Nieto, in which he worked with a coalition of administrators, staff, and community members to conduct a comprehensive qualitative and quantitative study in order to advise us on best practices. On the next slide, he provided a long list of recommendations, one of which was to hire a bilingual director, a director of linguistic programs. So thank you, David, for creating my position. And for the last 3.5 years, I have been driving his recommendations that fall into these 5 categories: becoming a dual language district, curriculum instruction and assessment, professional learning, human resources, and family engagement. On the next slide, the first thing that I did was I developed a dual language steering committee that's composed of staff, administrators, and stakeholders in order to establish a vision, a mission, and values so that we all had a single understanding of where we are, where we're going. And this was all informed by the Guiding Principles for Dual Language, which is a publication from the Center of Applied Linguistics, CAL, out of California. Next slide. You can see that I'm a second language learner for Spanish, so I see the huge benefit of bilingualism. So we developed this vision and mission, and in Spanish es desarrollamos y celebramos a los estudiantes bilingües, alfabetizados en 2 idiomas, empáticos como miembros contribuyentes en un mundo multicultural. Or in English, we develop and celebrate bilingual, biliterate, and empathetic students as contributing members in a multicultural world. Value, equity, respect. Next slide. We also came together to draft a variety of value statements to ensure that we all had a consensus on the things that we value with multilingualism, equity, and language and culture. On the next slide, you could see some visuals of how we were trying to transform into a dual language district. You see on the top left, that is the foyer for our registration office, where every single family sees a variety of languages represented, everything in both languages. Every time we create any sort of t-shirt or merchandise or anything related to the district, we assure that it's available in both English and Spanish. Next slide. And we really need valid and quality dual language curriculum and assessment. This is something that myself as a bilingual educator, a dual language educator, grade 4, 6, 7, and 8, work substantially in. And so in our district, on the next slide, you can see what we did in order to create our own valid, meaningful, and authentic curriculum, tailored and differentiated to our specific students that are in alignment with standards. We partnered with the organization Adelante, which is out of McHenry County in Illinois, in which that in collaboration, we developed standards-based, content-based literacy plans for both English and Spanish. Next slide. These dual language scope and sequence and unit fit plans integrated Common Core standards, Spanish language standards, the WIDA Can-Do standards, which refer to English language acquisition. The WIDA represents 44 states for English language assessment, foundational skills and standards in both English and Spanish, as well as best practice according to best practice research for language and academic development. Next slide. So in order to curate this curriculum, because there's often times that dual language educators can't just go out and purchase that curriculum like monolingual English can, we drew from a variety of sources and to purchase all the books necessary to curate a meaningful curriculum for our students. Next slide. We additionally, since all of our dual language students are multilingual learners developing foundational skills in both languages, we had to create our own foundational skills curriculum because there are many similarities with English and Spanish foundational skills. However, there's a few differences. For example, in English, there are 26 letters and 44 phonemes or sounds. In English, there's about 20, or in Spanish, there's about 26 letters and arguably between 24 to 26 phoneme sounds. So some overlap, but we had to essentially create something that would be meaningful for our students in between languages. On the next slide, you can see that I worked very close with the teaching and learning department, student services department, as well as all district leadership and our teachers to provide guidance about how best practices could be implemented in our classroom and may be just a little different than what they had learned in a monolingual teacher preparation program. On the next slide, we partnered with a variety of people, Laura Shenzi Moreno out of New York, Amy Mosquera from Adelante, as well as providing our own internal capacity professional development to support best teaching and learning for biliteracy. One thing that was very impactful, that continues to be impactful, is each summer we paid our dual language teachers to come in and to revise, enhance, and improve their curriculum based on what they know works with their students, what needs to be improved, and what new resources are available. We hosted a Lake County Multilingual Conference with Dr. Rocio del Castillo, Carly Spina, Amy Mosquera, and Dr. David Nieto, because it is very difficult to have teachers go to professional conferences because that means we need guest teachers, and there's not a lot of guest teachers. So we hosted our own conference to assure that all of our teachers had that opportunity. Next slide. Human resources. Frankly, we need more teachers and staff. There's a teacher shortage right now throughout the country, in Illinois, in our school, and in particular, bilingual teacher shortage. Teacher shortage for English as a second language, as well as people who are bilingual in related services, specialists, special education, and even principals and administrators. In order to staff our dual language program that has about 30 staff across 4 buildings, we have done a variety of things. In Illinois, they have an educator license with stipulation for bilingual ed, which allows for 5 years of teaching if somebody could demonstrate they're bilingual based on a state exam and has a bachelor's degree. This 5 years allows them time to complete their teacher certification. We also very actively recruit in our own community. We want our teachers to represent our demographics. And so we very actively recruit in our community, finding paraprofessionals, helping them to develop an educational pathway. And we are doing our best to develop capacity and reduce barriers for our bilingual paraprofessionals. Next slide. Additionally, in that there are not enough bilingual educators in the state or in this area, we are recruiting internationally, both with J1 visas, J2 visas, and H1B visas. The J1 and J2 are cultural ambassadorship visas, which last for 5 years, and the person has to go back to their country to share the culture they learned about American culture. The H1B visas are visas that enable a pathway towards nationalization and potentially citizenship. So it does allow more serious and qualified teacher candidates to apply. The next slide. Additionally, in partnership with Mundelein High School, our high school, we've developed an Aspire Education Academy that provides opportunities for students to take college level education classes, complete college level observation, and receive college credit by observing and participating in our elementary school district. family engagement. In order to support our program, any bilingual program needs a bilingual parent advisory committee. We created a BPAC in which we host nights for families new to the area and or country. We have cultural nights, we have literacy nights. We partner with our park district as well as library to show all the resources available in our community. And the BPAC is a very serious, helpful way to drive the growth in our program. That is all about District 75 Mundelein. Thank you so much. Gracias a todos ustedes.
Thank you so much, Ryan, Olga, Robin, for the presentation. So we're going to move into a Q&A section. We do have a couple of questions online and also some other questions that we have received before. So the first one that we have is how can we get the word out about resources to support multilingual students? So if one of our presenters might want to take that question.
Yes, I could see that there was a variety of sponsors for this. I do think it's which included a lot of educational advocacy groups as well as publishers. The dual language and multilingual demographic is one of the largest demographics throughout the country, particularly English, Spanish, but also Ukrainian, Russian right now too. To be ahead of the curve to assure that as these programs expand, to make sure that the school districts have available strong assessments, strong curriculum to support the goals of bilingualism, biliteracy, and multiculturalism.
Thank you, Ryan. So we have some great comments too in the Q&A, but those are not exact questions, but we want to address. We appreciate you putting those comments in there. I do have another question. What are your recommendations for states and educational leaders as they plan for their own program planning to support multilingual learners? Who might want to take that question?
I can take that question. I think that we need investment in communities so that you can create partnerships with universities or all of the incredible resources that I know we're doing in Salem-Keizer and that Ryan just shared. Making sure that your students that represent your community, that live in your community, that will stay in your community are coming and working and joining the workforce. I also think that it's really important that as you develop these programs, you have conversations with your state legislatures and the decision makers at the state level to open the door for some testing that happens in that partner language that helps tell the story. Right now in Oregon, we have at the elementary level, for example, an assessment that is only in English in 3rd grade. And there's an incredible story to tell that we do internally, and we do it in our presentations, but we also want it to count at the state level so that everyone knows how this program is giving those outcomes that the research has told us it gives for 44 years. So I think those are my two biggest recommendations for anyone that wants to start the work that we are doing.
And I would add too, as you begin to decide that that is where your school or district or community is wanting to go, providing opportunities for parents and community members to come together to learn about the benefits of dual language. And hopefully we've shared some resources that can help you think about that in really showing the success that we see across the country for our dual language learners.
To echo a little bit of what Olga said, in Illinois, school designations are based almost entirely on English language test scores, which does not allow our school designation or what appears on our Illinois report card, what impacts home pricing, to share what the students are able to do in Spanish and or other languages. An additional recommendation I would have is we need as a system to figure out a way to incentivize people to get into education, to find pathways for people to get into education, because in order to staff or support these programs, so many people want to learn additional languages. We need to find a way to get more educators, and particularly bilingual educators.
Thank you. Thank you, presenters. We do have a comment that I want to have to highlight from our Q&A from Beatriz Ceja. Thank you. I encourage all to visit the Department of Education NCLA website. They do have amazing resources. So I have to give a shout out to that group because they have been doing a lot of great work. And I want to make sure that you are able to reach out. There's a couple more questions on the Q&A. The one is, do you have a list of resources that you could share on basic strategies or activities that we can use in the classroom to help students build community and bond with one another, all while taking into consideration the different languages in their room?
One website or resource that I would strongly suggest visiting is called Colorine, Colorado. And I could put that in the chat. Colorine, Colorado has tons of tips on how to support multilingual learners in the classroom, how to partner with multilingual families, and how to run multilingual programs. So I think Colorine, Colorado, which I'll put in the chat, is an excellent place to start looking for that.
And then I'll add to what Ryan said, that it's important to invest on all of these activities and strategies to build community with staff too. As you develop a strong program, it's very important that you have conversations as a community of educators about what the program means, how everyone has a role and a very important role in a dual language school, even if you are not bilingual yourself. We have done a lot of work in investing in our monolingual staff members that speak English and are super interested and supportive of our dual language program. So just wanted to throw that out there. And then I also love the Colorín Colorado website. That is very helpful. We have Salem Kaiser link that I'm hoping is going to be shared here at the end. And we have some resources online that you could find helpful too from our curriculum department.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple more questions, really good ones too. The other question is, what are effective strategies to support students who might speak a third or fourth language that is not featured in the bilingual learning space? For example, the person asking the question says, I've supported English, Spanish, theater workshops in the schools, but we increasingly encounter students who speak other languages like Haitian Creole, Amharic, Portuguese, to name a few.
I can speak to that a little bit. One of the things that we encourage in the classroom is to have, for example, books that have those different languages of the children in the classroom. There are many publishers now that have books in English plus a bilingual version in many of those languages. And then a strategy that we really encourage our teachers to do, particularly if there's 2 or more students who speak a particular language, is allow them to process the information in their home language, and then give them opportunities to then demonstrate that in different ways through English, but really creating the space in the classroom where they feel valued and their language is elevated, just like English, or if they're in the English and Spanish dual language program, that they get to showcase that language. We kind of call the process a preview, review in a formal way for instruction, but I would encourage that.
Thank you so much. I'm actually right now posting on the chat the website from Salem Kaiser that Olga has been mentioning that has a lot of great resources. So thank you for that. I have a couple more questions. These are great questions. Keep coming to me. Regina asked, what specific PD training do you recommend for teachers working with multilingual learners?
I can begin answering that. I do think that there's some good training out there. I do think that training that really incorporates speaking, writing, interacting, reading, listening as core parts of all instruction is essential. One organization is called GLAD strategies. Those are fantastic for dual language and or multilingual learners. I believe the SIOP is another organization that provides great strategies for language instruction. The Freyer model for vocabulary. And then I also think anything that incorporates structured cooperative learning with sentence supports and word language supports are very effective.
Those are really great things that we've also included. And one of the areas that I would encourage is when you're looking at professional development to be able to include both your teachers who are maybe in the dual language strand, as well as teachers who might be teaching in English, but have English language learners or multilingual learners. We particularly have worked with the Bueno Center with Literacy Squared and their framework. And we've really been able to have teachers who are in dual language as well as in an English instruction classroom come together and learn many of the same strategies. One thing that has been really successful for us is that we really made a commitment to that training to be ongoing. So it wasn't just one time, but we have those researchers come to our site, work directly with our teachers, even in the classroom, but that there's really an ongoing plan for them to have access to that professional development.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you, everybody. We have one other question that this is around policy. I'm going to continue with that trend, which is, what are policy recommendations around assessment and accountability around bilingual programs?
It is very important. So as I mentioned earlier, summative designations for schools are based almost entirely on English test scores, which do not incorporate the full abilities of our students and recognize the goals of our program, our families. So if policymakers could also include as part of how ratings of schools value added for bilingual and dual language programs, that would be extremely helpful to honor this work and support this work. And additionally, it's really important that, and I'm glad Renaissance is hosting this, that we have valid assessments that measure students to both languages and not necessarily just identify them and norm them with only English speakers or only Spanish speakers, but norm them with students like them, simultaneous or multilingual learners.
And I'll add to that, it's really important to continue advocating for some funding. We need to have curriculum materials, assessments, just like Ryan is sharing with you, that are high quality and that are research-based for how multilingual learners develop language and what that trajectory looks like and how do educators support it. And so there's a large investment that states and districts have to do to support educators that are passionate and dedicated to serve the students that are in front of them. For a district like our district, with 61% of our students who are multilingual learners, we need to make huge investments that are worth our efforts. We want to support our students in the best way possible, but we want support from, and we need support for these high quality materials from state legislators and decision makers.
All right. So I'm going to start winding down to almost the closing of the webinar, and I would like to ask each one of you, we have states that truly want to make change and drive that change through policy. And we have districts that maybe are just thinking about shifting the way that they service their multilingual learners, and maybe even thinking about starting bilingual programs in their school districts. What will be the one or two things that you will recommend that they can utilize? They can start thinking about developing those programs. And so what, yeah, based on your experience and based on other districts that you have supported and helped before, you know, connected to state policy and also initiation within a district, what will be the information that you think that they should be going for?
I can start with encouraging people to tell the story. There is a lot of great work happening in districts across the nation. And again, incredibly dedicated people. And we have the outcomes to show that this program is very supportive of our students and their backgrounds, culture, their language, any student, any learner that comes to our schools. So tell the story, get in touch with a person at your state level. Sometimes there are work groups, and so we have done that in our district to continue the conversation, again, with those decision makers. Invite legislators to your schools so they can see the great work that is happening, and then continue following the research and training your staff.
I think that it's very important to empower the voices of multilingual families and communities. Bilingual education started or restarted in the 1960s based on grassroots efforts by bilingual families in California. And now 4 or 5 decades later, we have integrated dual language programs because a huge percentage of our families, whatever languages they speak at home, want to be competitive in the 21st century in our interconnected world, and that means being multilingual. This means competing with the other countries in the world where dual language education with English and the home language is standard. So it's very important that we empower the voices and communities of multilingual families.
I would add that really, when you're beginning to start to think about initiating dual language programs in your community, is to begin with a key group of leaders that includes your school district leaders and building leaders and teachers and community members to learn together about effective dual language programs. And there's lots of resources. The study that Doris highlighted in the beginning of our presentation by Wayne Thomas and Virginia Collier, they have a series of books that are really helpful in just learning about the effectiveness of the program, and then begin to build your plan for implementation that includes the identification of schools, of teacher training. Ryan shared some great things around families and the visibility, and really demonstrating that asset-based understanding of learning in 2 languages. And then I think it is, like we've said, tell the story as you start to have examples in your district and in your communities.
Well, thank you. Those are all the questions that we have. Jennifer, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your great questions and for participating today. We really appreciate everyone who's joined us. And I would like to give a huge round of applause for our moderator and our presenters. That was great information for our audience, and we really appreciate you spending your time with us today. To our audience, please do remember that Education Commission of the States is here to support you in your work. We trust that you'll be taking away at least one idea from today's webinar that your state can draw from. If you have any questions or requests related to this session, please feel free to reach out to me. My email should be there in the chat. Today's session was recorded, and the recording will be shared with you in a post-event email. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you again so much for joining us today. Have a good afternoon.